Blessed love and peace. Namaste. Shabbat Shalom. And this is a continuation of what I shared a few hours ago. And I'm going to endeavor to simply state the crux of the matter and then endeavor, by the grace of the Most High, to explain, to describe what I'm articulating. Essentially, the dilemma, the challenge that is experienced is the perceived favorability. I'll put this a different way. Within severe conditions of hostilities and restrictions against traditional marriage within society. What is experienced is the challenge of the favorability of patronizing pornography rather than vibing with 13, 14, 15-year-old girls. And that's a nasty statement. These are nasty days. So now I endeavor to explain it's not even an excuse, it's just a description of what the conditions are. So there's some steps in this articulation before addressing the significant concern here. All right. So one thing that I say before is that one of the challenges that brethren like myself experience is, well, I'll just speak for myself. I fall in love with every woman I see in life. That's one way of describing it. Now, in that experience, very challenging, very often through much of my life, there is lust. However, it's even beyond lust. And it's beyond, well, I won't get into the details, but that's what it is. Now, the thing about it is that in that love and of like transcendent, existential affinity, affirmation, however we describe that at that level, there's also the recognition of the challenges, the difficulties involved in endeavoring a life commitment with any and every woman that a man sees, that I see. So when I see a woman, there's the immediate affinity, but at the same time, there's also an awareness of the social, the earthly restrictions. I live by a code in this life. The traditions and the teachings, even as I abrogate the orthodox observance of Shabbat at this moment, I abide by the code and the consequences of the code. So that pertains to marriage as well, and whom a man may marry, and how a man may marry. So there are prohibitions from me proselytizing and going out and trying to convert any person to the spiritual walk that I practice within our community. And that also pertains to, or that has implications concerning marriage. A woman doesn't have to believe or subscribe to the same religiosity, but there is an element of that, and even just the perception of that, because the teachers within our spiritual community, we are accountable to. So we have to abide by the protocols accordingly. And so that, though there are restrictions and guidance and protocols about whom and how we can approach concerning marriage. And it's not an impossibility, it's not an absolute negation, but it does provide a pause. It does provide, we could say, a dissuading away from trying to marry just the next woman I see, or any woman that I see. Because when I see a woman and have an interest of marriage, what is recognized is that how much is she already practicing in terms of the ethics, the discipline, the rituals, the knowledge, the modesty, and otherwise within the life that we share in this community. And very often it's very distant. And so again, there's significant prohibitions of soliciting a woman to change what she does in order to practice in this way. And beyond that, just the simple challenge, even if she communicates a proactive interest to do so, there's still an awareness of how difficult it is. And just in terms of a personal awareness and a personal interest in her well-being and her happiness, it ain't easy, and it affects people's relationships with others, family members, loved ones, friends. It's a very arduous, it's a tedious lifestyle. It's a tedious life. So it's very, for one who is genuinely empathic and loves somebody else, one is very hesitant in inviting somebody else to join in the walk because of the difficulty and the modesty of living, the modesty of comfort, the necessity of the ethics, because that's significantly what provides protection and security and trust with others. So it's serious. And because of that, when I see a woman and I fall in love with a woman and have an interest of being with a woman for the rest of life, that affinity is tempered by the understanding of what is involved in a woman joining in this path. And I've endeavored to compromise and find middle ground, but what is recognized at this point in my life at 49 years of age is that this way of being, it's beyond myself, it's beyond my volition, and I'm beholden within it. So I've done all types of efforts of again finding middle ground, and this is not something that I'm making up. It's not something that I can negotiate. So it is something that I simply explain. So that tempers that affinity, that attraction, and very by and large, it's recognized that the women whom I meet, the women whom I encounter very often, are rather distant in terms of life discipline, and experience, and thus in terms of me being proactive in inviting union in this life. There's so much of a distance that it is comparatively easier for me to abstain from that. There are occasions, even within the past year, that I do reach out. But again, even when just broaching the subject of marriage, many women are unaccustomed to that, and so have difficulty even just processing that. And communication, well, that's a whole nother topic, but and I'm not perfect either, and I get intoxicated and clumsy, further clumsy, when endeavoring to make communications as well. So my point here is that that even in falling in love with every woman that I see, which is facts, I'm also able to temper that envelopment with the understanding of the implications of such a prospect of union. And again, it's not a deal breaker. It's not an absolute no. It's not an impossibility. But it provides enough sobriety and pause, such that I continue on with the work that I do, um, generally accordingly. So there's that. Now, I mentioned before how when I'm in public, I say hi to everybody I see, or at least I wave and acknowledge people's existence. And when I talk about a spiritual man, a religious man, traditional Orthodox, being significantly influenced by the sexual prowess of a woman, then why don't I just not say hi to people? One of the reasons is because there's excessive social sterility within society that precipitates an excessive amount of hostilities and apathy, violence and aggressions, and predatoriness. People need to see hi. People need to say hi. And you can talk with police, you can talk with other people, experts in terms of community safety, and additionally. And when people refuse to look at each other, it's much easier for predators to lurk and pick off victims one by one. I remember a documentary that talks about the metro stations in Brazil, Sao Paulo, in the land of Guarani, that talks about those who scope out and scout would-be victims for theft, for burglary, or robbery, or whatever else, rape, would discern who's making eye contact, who's looking in fear, who's paying attention. And when people aren't paying attention and enveloped and fearful, and additionally, much easier victims. When people acknowledge each other, there's a further safety. It's common sense. And even beyond just that basic rationale, when we talk about the experience of village community, it begins by simply acknowledging each other. And then it goes further towards having some type of congeniality with each other, communicating, remembering, and then further building a relationship and cooperation with each other as villagers. So that's what I do for over 20 years. And there are protocols about that. I don't, if I see a woman by herself, I may wave, I may say hi, depending upon the circumstances and the vibe. No numbers, no pushing up, nothing like that. And a woman is not obligated to say anything back. I'm simply communicating an energy of positivity, as much and as genuine as I can provide that. When a woman is with a man, I just say hi to the man, respecting him and his relationship with the woman. If she says hi to me, if he says hi, that's it. I continue on, and we can. And if the woman says hi, because that often happens, but I don't say anything to her. And sometimes women might perceive me being disrespectful by not saying anything to her when she says hi to me, but there's trust that he has a conversation with her afterwards, and explain if she has any kind of feels any type of way about that. So that's part of the protocols. If they're children with parents, I don't say anything to the children. Just talk to the father, or if it's a mother, talk tie to the mother and continue on. Again, don't have to say nothing in back. And it's for that reason. It's for that purpose. So yes, I avail myself to those types of interactions accordingly. Um, then one other scenario is when a man is with a woman, and this actually happens comparatively often. If a man is with a woman, or when a man is with a woman, and I say hi, I'll wave, I acknowledge the man. He doesn't even look at me, looks the other way, doesn't say anything else like that. Oftentimes, the woman with him sees that, recognizes that, and is like, "You can't go out like that." So she says hi to me, and in that particular scenario, I do acknowledge her acknowledging me, because at that point, there's obvious tensions, and additionally, and she's making an effort to provide some reconciliation. So there's a certain obligation of doing that, particularly recognizing that the norm within society at this moment in postmodern Western civilization is increasingly egalitarian in terms of the interaction between men and women, compared to further traditional cultures where men and women do not talk with each other, where women are covered often, hijab and otherwise. So in Western civilization, there's a further expectation of men treating women in a way that men treat men in terms of these types of public protocols of etiquette. So in that particular scenario, when I say and acknowledge the man, he doesn't even look at me or whatever and pretends nothing, and the woman says hi back, I will say hi, acknowledge her acknowledging me, and then continue on. And to this point, there's not even the hardcore men don't say anything when I say hi to the woman, and I'm not trying to push up or anything. Again, this is peace and diplomacy in the village. So those are some of the protocols. And again, yes, I veil myself because when I see a beautiful woman, I'm paused and I'm about to ask for marriage right there, and that's just a man right there. And particularly when a woman, a pretty girl, a pretty young woman, um, smiles and says hi, is coy, is shy, and says hi, gold does not even compare to that. Gold is not doesn't even enter the equation of that realm. So again, it's discipline, and there it is. So all that being said, when I talk about a middle-aged man vibing with a 13, 14, 15-year-old girl, it's nasty. It's a nasty situation, and because we are in nasty conditions, and but that's the actuality. And again, this is not a matter of me trying to push up on 13, 14, 15-year-old girls. It's a matter of the actuality of me being approached by 13, 14, 15-year-old girls, 16, 17-year-old girls, numerous occasions within recent years. And this is not self-bragging. These are facts. And it's painful. It's painful. Because, well, before I get to that, so again, one of the when encountering the women who are older, 18, 19, 20, 30, and having that affinity, again, having the pause and the hesitation, because knowing the distance necessary to um, uh, the distance that is necessary to bridge in terms of a prospective marriage and union. So that helps to provide some sobriety and further deliberation. So now, and the actuality is that when a woman is younger, when she's 18, 17 years old, and like I said before, is further green, fertile. A woman and knowledge, having some type of knowledge and interest in the world, but at the same time still being soft and nurturing and gentle. Um, just being honest, it's further difficult to find those reasons to say no, and to say, well, pause, and to say hesitation, and whatever else. Obviously, again, there's the laws, and additionally, but those aren't written in stone. As I mentioned before, there's still the prospect when it's an honorable endeavor. It's not a hit and quit. It's when it's an honorable endeavor of marriage. The laws are less prohibitive in that respect. It's a matter of talking with the parents, and additionally, so um, point being here is that when a woman is younger, and she's not a citizen, and the other component about being a citizen is that um, I mentioned before the citizens having the guilt of the oppression caused by the nation of the citizens, and particularly when one is a recipient, when a man, including myself, is a recipient of those atrocities and afflictions, that factors into the equation of the interaction accordingly. So when a woman is younger, it's further difficult to find those reasons of saying no. And thus, uh, the woman, 16-year-old, 15-year-old, um, is increasingly impressionable, and a man is influenced by that. Uh, and that's concerning. It's not favorable. It's not necessarily a bad thing in and of itself, um, but it's a huge it's very difficult. And So again, point being that it's further difficult for a man to find the reason of saying no compared to older women in the manner that I described. Age gap is, some might just cite the age gap, and also many people who are judging conditions that are, and additionally are doing so with a predatory lens and looking at and based on the presumptions of normalcy within postmodern society, and it's unhealthy, it's harmful, it's predatory. And so just looking at age differential and saying, oh, it's terrible. And yes, the factors of influence, power dynamics in terms of age and experience is significant. But again, people are looking at it in the context of like secular marriage, and not looking at it as much in the context of commitment and lifelong and the serious conservative nature of relationship and bond. So, and also historically, when a man traditionally, very often, through thousands of years, a man has the necessity of living life and accumulating a certain amount of knowledge, a certain amount of material wealth in order to have a wife. And so typically is further older. And just the facts of life is that a young woman is a further preferable wife prospect, 16, 17 years old, because of her youth, because of her virility, her fertility. And that's why in traditional communities, Orthodox communities, there's a strong guidance for women to be married at a young age, 17, 18 years old, for men to be married at a younger age because of that. So the notion of a 40-year-old, a 50-year-old marrying a 20-year-old might sound disgusting in secular context, but it's beneficial for that secular mindset to check itself about what it perceives as normal, and then make further evaluation accordingly. Again, I agree it's unfavorable, but it's beneficial to look at the entirety and be honest about that. So all that being said, there are imbalances and there are things to reconcile, but given the way things are at this moment and how people of the same age treat each other, the lack of commitment, the promiscuity, the dishonesty, the predatoriness, the co-enabling, the co-dependency, and additionally, it's difficult for one to categorically and accurately and genuinely criticize another methodology. So all that being said, I agree with the unfavorability of of the circumstance of a middle-aged man marrying a woman, a young lady. Well, I won't say a girl, because again, I'm talking about females who are who already go through puberty, who are physically developed, and who are menstruating and are able to have children. And additionally, so people can argue about the definitions of whether that's a woman or otherwise, but in the traditional sense, that is a woman, even if she's 15, 16 years old. But the point here is not to get enveloped in the terms and nuances there. But anyways, that's that. So a significant thing of what precipitates me sharing this at this moment is that I am approached by, I'm not asking specific ages, but if I were to guess, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds. And again, this is not bragging. It's painful, because I am aware of where the young sistren are coming from. There are situations where it seems as though the woman is being trafficked and may be approaching me for a job, may be approaching me as a plea for a way out, may be approaching me as a ploy, an intention of getting me caught up, for a number of different motives, whether it's setting me up for legal persecution from the conventional society, the conventional legal system, whether it's actually trying to get me involved within a certain clique, and having a woman or a young sister who is groomed to be a seductress, and then in seducing a man such as myself, not necessarily with the intention of blackmail or white male or um, uh, any intentionally involving the legal system, but just like, okay, now you're one of us. Let's roll. We know what you got going on here. We want you to bring it to the table here. So there are all different types of motivations and how the game works. But the general consideration is the pain, the challenge that the young sister is experiencing, um, and uh, and what my responsibility is in responding. Um, I think about specific scenarios that occurred just within the past year, just within the past few years. Um, uh, and again, women who are very, and again, when a young woman communicates an affinity towards a boy, a man, um, that's it's uh, there's an energy, there's a vibe. So, I experienced that in numerous occasions. I mean, in numerous different ways. Um, Minding my business, and a young sister walks up and just starts talking. And people can um, presume or throw out a lot of different types of rationales or explanations, but um, it's beneficial to be honest. And again, I may be accused of having some kind of super ego of just thinking any woman who comes up and talks with me wanting to marry me or otherwise, but then at the same time, uh, to be honest about that, and it may not necessarily be a matter of just like being amazed or whatever about whoever I may be, but also coming from an experience of like desperation or otherwise, or just loneliness, or abuse in the household, and finding, oh, that's the other thing too. Um, yeah, youth tend to be able to pick up on, particularly women, and this is something I learned. Girls are very astute, and have a comparative amount of honesty to respond to the energies that people emit, that people project. And so when a young woman, 13, 14, 15 years old, sees a grown man who is, I won't say eyeballing, but making eye contact, um, the actuality is that I don't fear death. I don't fear, I have less concerns about pain. I'm not looking for death. I'm not trying to tempt death or seek it, per se. But no fear about that. I'm a spiritual being and I'm visiting this earthly realm. And at the same time, I don't have hate. I don't have vitriol towards others. It's love. So there's a strength, there's a power, there's an energy, and there's a vibration with that. And I'm aware that women have an attraction towards that. And I'm a piece of shit. I walk with God. I'm no better or worse than anybody else. But this is some of the things that I experienced, particularly in practicing the discipline of conserving my energy, conserving my life force, and having genuine intention in my relationship with all life, and particularly with women of this earth. Um, so women see that, women respond to that. We young women observe that, and see that and respond to that. So um, I do that for numerous years at this point, and so sometimes it can be easy to just to like perceive it as given. But um, point here is that when a girl who is 13, 14, 15 years old goes up to a man, not, don't know each other from before, um, and starts conversation and smiles and I won't say flirt because it's even beyond flirt. A young girl like that doesn't have to flirt to get the attention or the affection of a man. It's just a matter of like her sharing her energy and company. That's that's very influential, and so uh, it's difficult to say no to that. Um, it's been over 20 years since I have any type of sexual interaction with a woman or any being. So I am able to say no up to this point, but there are occasions, even just within the past year, where I do begin to respond and begin the conversation of marriage accordingly, because um, these are the conditions. Um, so I'm having an interior debate about how much I share about details about some of the scenarios. It's helpful to give examples when just speaking about something, particularly about this, because otherwise it might just seem like dishonesty or ego grandizing or whatever. Um, but I also recognize that if I talk about things, then I'm providing further information concerning the women, and there's concerns about the well-being of the women that I'm thinking about. So let's see, I'm trying to think how I can describe this. There are occasions when, well, there are a number of different contexts. There's like if when I'm here in the village, I'm approached by a number of young women through the years, and have many conversations. And oftentimes it might be just a one-time thing in terms of the conversation. Sometimes there's follow-up. And within recent years, the conversations become increasingly involved. Um, and I'm mindful of that. There are occasions when I'm in a different setting, um, nearby, but outside of my immediate village, and I'm approached by young women, and in some ways, to be honest, it seems like the young women know who I am, maybe from seeing something on YouTube or whatever, and not only know who I am, but maybe even traveling from a distance to be able to connect. And that might seem like some psychotic perception of being stalked or whatever, but stranger things happen in this life that I personally experienced. So, given the way circumstances are in terms of society, technology, and everything else like that, it's actually increasingly plausible. But that's the vibe that I get, like just like a young sister, and it's not just. I'm thinking about a number of specific scenarios, particularly where a sister who communicates an interest in me and is very proactive in talking with me, pretty young, vibrant, and being very flirty and just being, I won't say flirty because that's a little bit misleading, but just being very affectionate and just being very positive. But also being with all other sistren as well, a few others, so there's further safety. And so like, and with that, there seems to be some kind of like intentionality of planning accordingly, um, and um, it does have an influence. There's intoxication in that type of vibe, that vibration. Um, there's sobriety and a sense of dutifulness of being responsible and tending to the needs that the woman may have, and discerning what those needs are. What is it that she's looking for? I've been in situations where I'm just sitting, having lunch, whatever, and a woman sits next to me, 14, 15 years old, and starts chatting me up. And again, it's not a matter of like her hitting on me or whatever, but like looking for, uh, we can say a daddy, looking for a husband, but even just simply looking for a man, looking for the attention, the positive safety, comfort, and company of a man. Um, and uh, and me there. I tend to be in those situations. I tend to be in my on mode in terms of like being on duty, and so I have my very. It's easier for me to focus. But again, to be honest, within the past year and further, I'm become increasingly um, inclined towards responding with certain interest and intentionality of relationship in an honorable way, marriage, um, asking, "What would you like from me?" And then, oftentimes, particularly when talking with a woman, particularly when talking with a feminine woman, it's not a matter of asking her a lot of questions. It's a matter of sharing things and anticipating and being proactive in the conversation, which my skill set or my practice of that is comparatively modest. As much as I go on and on here, I actually, when talking with other people, I actually ask a lot of questions, and I try to be attentive to what the other person's experience is. But what I've learned, particularly within recent years, is that in talking with a feminine woman, and particularly a feminine woman who has an interest in marriage and relationship with a man, it's a matter of the man talking, and not asking a lot of questions. Questions have a way of imposing upon others the weight of responsibility and authority. And if somebody has a lot of responsibility and authority already, those questions can be very heavy, even when they're basic, simple questions. So what I learned is when talking with a feminine woman, that there's a further preference. There's a further preference for uh, the woman has a preference for the man doing the talking, particularly when she's younger, and listening, and maybe not even asking questions back, and still being thoroughly interested, but just kind of like vibing off of his energy, off of his voice. We can talk about the studies of Margaret Mead and anthropology, and the traditional perceptions and beliefs concerning the voice of a man, and the implications and beliefs concerning that. People talk about hearing the voice of God, and additionally, but there's a lot that goes into the base of a man's voice. So young sistren have an affinity with that vibration. So it may be simply a matter of hearing a man talk. So in those scenarios, what I consider is what is the need that the woman has. I ask about her father. How's the situation in her house? I sometimes ask, does she feel safe? But oftentimes, because that can lead towards like some kind of like negative kind of challenge, and if she's being watched at that moment for whatever reason, she may be further uncomfortable in responding to those questions. So I try to keep it directed in a positive way. How does she spend her days? If she's in school, what is she studying? What does she like? What does she want to do? Da 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 da. And anyways, these are some conversations that I have in the past year, in recent years, and trying to focus on the appropriate, responsible communication and relationship accordingly. But at the same time, being a man and seeing this as a potential, a prospective wife, and marriage situation, because that's what I'm guided towards. That's what I'm commanded to be, and so I have a continual mindset for that, whilst also being on duty and additionally. And so that is where things are now. One other element in this scenario is that when perceiving a woman being in trouble, whether there's maybe some domestic issues at her house between her parents, whether it's a single parent household, whether she's actually being trafficked by her parents or by somebody else, whether she's just looking for attention from a man, and is even willing to participate in further promiscuous behavior to get that attention and maintain that attention, whether she's looking for stability with a man, whether she's actually looking for marriage, whether she's actually very shy and conservative, and this is the first occasion of her having that type of interaction with a man, whether it's a matter of her knowing who I am and intentionally approaching me with that knowledge, and trying to be as discreet as possible about it. What I try to think of all the different scenarios, the likely scenarios, the probabilities, what her needs may be, and what I can provide for her at that moment and continually. Um, I've yet to even ask for a number in any of these situations. There's one occasion where I exchanged a couple of occasions extreme, and I'm gonna abstain from saying what the circumstance was because that might be providing too much information. But it was a circumstance where there was a further appropriateness in exchanging information. I can say that I was overseas, so that factors into it, and particularly the conditions and being overseas. So, other than that, particularly when I'm here, I abstain from asking for any number or contact information because, if on my part, amidst there be if there is an interest in further communication, and there has been, there is, I communicate the intention of meeting someplace in public and then furthering the conversation in that respect, whether it's a library. One time there was a coffee house meeting because the library was closed, and there's an absence of any other place. Um, there's a request of meeting at a particular hour because of the work schedule. And so to accommodate that, the place that was identified is a nearby coffee house. So other than that, it's a matter of meeting in public and keeping and these were with sisters who were comparatively older, 17, 18 years old. Um, and that's a little bit of information right there. But point is, like, it's not a matter of hollering because on my part, amidst any interest of being in a relationship, it's about marriage. And when it gets to that point of marriage, it's a matter of, okay, um, we'll go to your house and we'll talk to your parents. Um, and there it is. So um, that's generally the thing. Now I have to be honest because in this in the midst of the conditions, there's a strong susceptibility of saying, well, I see that things are very challenging, and coming up with rationales for saying, okay, just come back with me, and we'll be married, and we'll do things from this point. So because that's the susceptibility of the intoxication and the discipline that's necessary to be righteous and forthright, even when a woman, a young beautiful sister, is interested and affectionate and enthusiastic, and very willing to be with the man, with whatever he says. So that's part of the danger because it's necessary for the man to be further disciplined accordingly, and that's what I'm talking about in terms of. Well, I'll put it. I'll keep that part there. Um, and what I'll say again is going back to the different motivations and possibilities because um, it could be a game, it could be entrapment, it could be a setup, it could be a jailbait or otherwise. Um, and even in not saying any, or even when not pursuing it, that the fact is that even in just having the conversation, sometimes it's just a wave. Um, there's occasions where I'm in public, and I'm not again. I told you, I just mentioned the protocols of how I address people, how I acknowledge people, and additionally, when a youngster who seems to be 14 years old, 15 years old, and there's a parent, an adult with that youngster, I just make eye contact with the adult, and that's it. If it's a family, and even if the sister and look 20 years old and 21 years old, they're still obviously with a parent, a father, mother. I just address the father and mother. That's it. So respect that. And that being said, there are occasions when, again, even just a little high. And additionally, there's so much that's communicated, so much vibe, and um, it's an amazing thing, but it's also um, a difficult thing because it's other than the most favorable thing. It's other than the most favorable thing for a middle-aged man, 40 years old, 50 years old, um, to to vibe like that with a 13, 14-year old. To get a wink, or it's not a wink, but because actually that's easy, that's easier to deflect and avoid, because it's further obvious. It's when there's a genuine interest that's communicated, through a smile, through a wave, through those coy, feminine ways of, and what I'm looking right now is just squad cars, with their lights on at the moment. So, and it's 3 a.m. thereabouts. So, noted. And it's also Shabbat, as I mentioned before. So I'm enveloped in this experience. I'm abrogating the traditional protocols of not utilizing electricity, and not recording. That's the huge thing. So obviously, this is something I'm influenced by, the conditions of recent weeks of my interaction with the computer, the internet, and additionally, um, and even if I seem sober and seem to be maybe very logical and rational, I'm very much influenced, by these conditions, and still trying to like process and figure out how this phenomena of the internet and technology has this influence over me. Um, so this experience of relationship with woman is a significant factor, because I recognize that when I do view the pornography for years and years ago, that there's a cipher, there's a bond that is established, between myself and the internet, and the cipher, and the nature of the internet changes, in the past decade. So, even whilst my behavior may be further distant and not viewing pornography within the past 8 years, the bond is eternal, and the bond is essentially with all the women that I viewed before, with all the women who are pained, and additionally, and there's a mutuality in terms of that pain, as I mentioned before. So, anyways, that influences, this that factors into this influence that the computer and the internet have upon me at this moment, because I don't do this on Shabbat. This is like the second week that I've done this. Otherwise, I don't utilize electricity actually at all, pretty much, other than the computer during the week, but definitely not during Shabbat. So, and definitely not recording anything on Shabbat. So, this is how severe the influence is at this moment. Now, I've discerned a methodology of addressing this, but there's a holding pattern in implementing that solution, for certain reasons, for the short term. So at the moment, I'm dealing with it, and so, uh, continuing back with the topic. Uh, Talking about vibe, and um, there's a term that Rita Marley describes concerning Bob Marley, and she makes the statement, that's like Jamaican patois about cutting a look and looking away, meaning like, I mean, we know, for those brethren and sisters who experience the relationship and affinities towards others, man towards woman, woman towards man, you don't have to say much. It can be just an eye contact. It can be a wave. It can be a smile, and right there, that can launch 1,000 ships. So, um, people can be presumptuous. People can be egotistical. People can be predatory, in those things, and in terms of giving off those signals, and then in terms of receiving or interpreting, or feigning those signals. But, um, there's still, it exists. It's a phenomena. There's genuineness within it, and there's still vibe. And when that vibe is being experienced with a sister and who's 14 years old, 15 years old, I say 13 years old, and again, I'm not checking IDs about this, but, it can be that young, in terms of what I personally experience, and for a number of different reasons. Um, the point here is that even when there's very modest conversation, even when there's zero conversation in terms of verbal interaction, that still is an influence. And it's not even just an influence of trying to holler or anything else like that, but it's like an influence of like, who is that young sister? And I do have that captain mentality about like, what can I do? And that might seem disgenuine, of just like some false pretense for trying to holler additionally, but for those who do experience that type of empathy, amidst all my personal foibles and greediness and selfishnesses, and additionally, there is a genuineness in that. And that influences me, and it influences my plans. It influences where I consider going in my daily, weekly, monthly repertoire. And those travels influence, again, the conversations and the information and the suggestions, and the plans of ongoing projects, and people know that. People who are skilled in the game and how the game works know that, and employ deceptive tactics of placing young sistren in these positions. Young sistren who may be very young and seem very fertile or innocent or otherwise, but are actually very much abused and corrupted, and otherwise, and beholden to the protection and the provisions of pimps and abusive family members and otherwise. And so being put into positions of seduction for middle-aged men, for younger men, and otherwise, for multitudes of objectives. So even in those scenarios, there's still the consideration amongst myself and brethren like myself: what can I do? How can I provide help accordingly? Because when there is that type of connection, that type of vibe, I can think of those types of interactions that occur years ago, and still considering how I might have responded further favorably at that moment, and what I might still be able to do with interactions with sistren, even 6 years ago, 7 years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago, but even further. So anyways, I'm gonna keep it at that. So point being that even when a man is diligently striving to be on the straight path, and the middle path, there are challenges and temptations and afflictions that make partnership within the middle path, within the straight path, rather tedious, and perceivably implausible, such that the endeavor is to continue on regardless of what the challenges are. But at the same time, when being confronted with these other side paths, these other distractions, these other near veering and rationalizations, I'm gonna leave it at that. So however ambiguous it may seem, however coherent people might perceive within my words in the past hour, I'm gonna keep it as it is. I basically shared what there is intended for me to share at this moment. I have to reconcile and deal with the consequences of this after this. So I ask the Most High Elohim to be patient, merciful, in my actions at this moment, and to guide me to better understand what is happening and what to do within these conditions, and to find that proper partnership, the healthy partnership and relationship, marriage with a woman, children in this life, as we are commanded, as we are guided, as we are inspired to do and to be. So, with that being communicated, again, all thanks and praise to the Most High Elohim, respect and honor to all our ancestors, prophets, and sages, past and present, known and unknown. Respect and honor to His Majesty Haile Selassie I and Her Majesty Wise Al-Amanan. Respect and support to all our progeny, from the first Siete years to the next Siete generations, Dor Vador. One heart, one mind, one perfect love, supreme, with blessed love and peace in Rastafari.